You've got the far side where the lorries are parked at the moment, so obviously we're not using that because we've got a show down there. But that's really where you get a chance to get a feel for the car. So for us, the sort of latest car really that we've got, and really the main car of the range at the moment, is the new SLS. So it's been a really important car for us. It came out in 2010. It's hard to believe it's already just a year old. The chassis construction of the SLS is exactly the same. It's a tubular frame chassis, which was unusual, peculiar to the SL Gullwing of the 50s. It's also peculiar to this. This one, however, is the first one that's ever had an aluminium space frame, as we call it, chassis. So the engine, rather than being sort of sat over the front wheels, it's actually back here, which gives it better weight distribution. Also, to help the weight distribution, the gearbox is between the rear wheels. So it's a transaxle gearbox. It's also the first full twin-clutch gearbox system that we've produced. The SLS's main claim to fame, a bit of a dubious claim to fame, but it's received the highest ever speeding fine. This is about 3,200 components, so there's quite a few sub-assemblies, for example the brake calipers that are intact. But what it does is give you a really good overview, a really good idea of the kind of technology that goes into Formula One. Teams sit down in March to design the car for the next year, so they're pretty much working a full year in advance. Now everything on these cars has to be designed pretty much from a clean sheet of paper. So they're each designing their own little components, every bit as important as that detail side of things as well. So what we'll do, we'll start looking at the construction of a Formula One car. Now, Formula One car nowadays largely made of something called carbon fibre that's reinforced with aluminium and various different layers of carbon fibre, really for the safety. So by the tub, what we're talking about is the centre part of the car, the bit that has autonomy written on it. That's the tub, that's the driver's safety cell. So that's really the linchpin of the entire car. Everything else hangs around from that. Now, it's designed to be strong, it's designed to keep the driver safe. Everything else around it is sacrificial. So when you see an accident and you see bits flying off the car, that's actually a good thing. Those bits are absorbing the impact, absorbing the energy, they're keeping the driver safe. And that includes the engine. The engine's designed to break away, an automotive work of art. It's absolutely beautiful. You look at the aerodynamic sculpting, none of this is for show. We were actually involved in a big crash at Le Mans. It wasn't actually anything to do with our fault, we just got caught up in an accident that happened, and we withdrew from all kind of motorsport. We've got a couple of what I think are slightly artificial devices. We have KERS and we have DRS. So I'll explain what all those letters mean. DRS, drag reduction system, that focuses on the rear wing, and it's quite a simple thing really. Stored in a battery pack which is under the fuel tank just behind the driver. Then when the driver hits the KERS button, all that energy then goes back through into the motor, which instead of harvesting the electricity, then actually spins and boosts the motor by about 60 to 70 horsepower. What we have here is an exhibition of 10 cars representing 10 areas in which we feel that we innovate as a brand. So I'll take you through each one, tell you a little bit about the area, tell you a little bit about why we've chosen the car that we have to represent it. Now, first area that we feel we innovate in is performance. To be honest, these horses' carriages, they're a bit top heavy, they don't handle very well. What I want is something that's faster, it's got to be lower, it's got to handle, it's got to be quick. Can you make it? I think you're the guy to do it, can you make it? And Daimler said, well, yeah, we'll give it a go. We got his specifications. What Gottlieb Daimler came up with was basically that car down the end that we'll have a look at in a moment, the 35 horsepower. It was purely a test vehicle, no idea of making it a production car. Now, I find it fascinating that in 1970, 8 years before ABS made production, there's actually a switch where they could switch in or out the ABS. They were testing ABS even as early as the late 60s. Problem was we didn't have an engine that was capable of competing with the likes of Ferrari, Aston Martin, and Bentley Jaguar. So what we had to do was we couldn't make the car powerful, we had to make it light. Now the next one we've got, the Dictator's favourite, the 600 in its normal wheelbase guise, or this is the extended Pullman guise, cameras projected up on a strip of screens that goes across the dashboard. So really the forerunner of parking sensors and of course the reversing camera as well. It had keyless entry, it had keyless go as well. This is the only F car that's in private hands. It was bought by a collector in the late 90s for £11 million. So it was the first thing that really got people aware of the impact their cars had on the environment. So in the 80s, as an option, you could specify this car with a catalytic converter. But as an added bonus, every single car that came off the production line had the wiring to accept a catalytic converter. Now, This car is a recreation. Doesn't look much like a Formula One car. We associate Formula One cars with wheels that stick out, narrow streamlined bodies. We were joined by a very talented young engineer, Hungarian called Bela Berenyi, and he really was our safety guru. He went on to design and develop a lot of our early safety systems. We'll deal with actually passive safety first. Now, car design and thinking in the day was you try to make a car as strong as possible. You make it a rigid box, you'll protect people. Problem is, if you hit something, the car stops all very well, but the occupants don't. And we patented the crumple zone. Also in the 50s, we invented the first crash test, with the first manufacturer to throw a perfectly good car at a brick wall. In the early days, we actually used real people, fire these things into walls, and eventually we ended up with a good catapult system. You know, if a car skids or slides, if we can break the wheels, maybe we can actually sort of help control the car and actually control its movement. Other things we've invented in terms of passive safety, we did the first ever airbag test in 1968. Now the airbag took longer than ABS to get into production. Didn't come into production until 1981. Debuted on the S-Class, so we have the patents to the airbag. And we've also got patents to things like the rollover hoop that we have on the SL, first sports car to be designed with a safety structure.